Shalom in the home, a little glass of wine, a little chit chat about the Bible. Why not? The first reading from the scrutiny readings this weekend is from a text from Ezekiel, from the Valley of the Dry Bones, and I find it absolutely beautiful and so incredibly fitting. Let me read this one part of it first off, talking about the Valley of the Dry Bones. Therefore prophesy and say to them, thus says the Lord God, I am going to open your graves and bring you up from your graves, O my people. I will bring you back to the land of Israel. This God who can reach into our graves that we dig for ourselves, into the graves of the deepest hurts that we have, and love us back to life. This past week, I was able to hear twice a Holocaust survivor Robbie Wiseman, speak. And it was incredibly moving. And this man's spirit was so filled with compassion and love and this connection of what was the dry bones of the Holocaust, that he was able to somehow live that back to life. And so this is what I want to say about this. So many times we find ourselves in a grave, or so many difficult times in our lives. First off, to say God does not make those times happen. God weeps with you within those times. For a world to be a world, it has to be free. So you have to be able to choose. For love to be love, it has to be chosen. You can't force someone to love. And so, but what the promise is that even within these valley of dry bones, God can breathe life back into it. God can breathe life. And what that means is that we open our eyes to see that God is breathing connection into everything. How we can take every experience we experience in our lives, and these dry bones of exhaustion and fear and everything that once separated us gets healed back to life. So what I witnessed with Mr. Wiseman was this: a man that went through beyond any horrors that I could ever imagine, but who 30 years later, after going through the Holocaust, he learned that there were some people, that there was a specific teacher that was teaching the Holocaust didn't happen. And that was the moment that he woke up, and that he opened up to God breathing into those dry bones. These are my words, with these dry bones, the way that I see it. And now this story that had so much pain and so much disconnection and separation and anger and hate, he now uses it to connect. So these things in our lives, when God can use everything, nothing goes to waste. And it doesn't mean that God had nothing to do with creating or making the Holocaust. Those are people making horrific decisions. But God is breathing into our dry bones, saying, love each other, connect to each other, take what has separated within you, hear God calling you, just as God calls to Lazarus out of the tomb in the gospel reading today, and then arise and leave that in the tomb and use those struggles and those things that you have gone to connect. Because Mr. Wiseman, you saw, I was able to see him connect to thousands of teenagers, of kids, of anybody that was there, to see his story of brokenness and to see how all of the light comes through all of those cracks, and how that story of brokenness had life breathed into it and helped heal all around him as well. And it's absolutely beautiful. So may you know that within the dry bones that we have in the really difficult times in our lives, that if we open our hearts and our minds, there is always an invitation for God to breathe life into those dry bones. Grace and peace, friends.